Hello, everyone. We are going to have our next episode on our podcast called Heartstreams, a podcast where we'll talk about matters of the heart. So, as we have discussed on our first episode, we talked much about creative pursuits, right? And for now, we are going to delve into a more timelier topic that is pretty much experienced by everyone, which is our struggles with mental health lately. Right, Ange?
Yeah, it's gonna be a timely, like this is definitely a timely topic, Alvi, because these days, as we all know, Alvi and I are both living in and residing in Cagayan de Oro City, and at this time of recording this episode, uh, we have heard the grave news that the ECQ, Enhanced Community Quarantine, is has been extended until I think it's in the middle of August. Until that time,
Yes.
I'm not specifically sure which date exactly, but it's really affecting not only the economy but our health. The pandemic happened, so all of us are vulnerable when it comes to like
Mm-mm.
catching the flu. And I hope that every one of us is doing precautionary measures like taking the vaccine and doing social distancing and wearing protective gear when we go outside. And basically, I just hope that our mental health conditions won't worsen because like aside from the physical illness that the pandemic has caused, our mental health has also like if we reflect at the consequences that the pandemic has resulted has given us, then I think that there are a lot of things to worry, and that has affected our mental health. And basically, this episode is meant for all of us. And just a side note, though, Alvi has a background in psychology, so I would rely on her to like educate us
Yes.
on on
Mm-mm.
certain topics about that. But personally, for me, I will just base my testimony on my experience. I'm not a licensed psychologist, so I can only share what I want to share about how like the coping mechanisms, how I survived, how I dealt with the worries that that I've been feeling lately. So basically, yeah, let's go with it, Alvi. I'm excited for it.
Yes, so as Angela said, we are going to talk about our experiences mostly. So we're not gonna bombard the audience with psychological jargons, but if there is a need, then I'd pretty much love to assist and help with that. So yes, how are you, Ange? How are you? Kamusta
So
lately? How is life?
that's a loaded question. Well, I can like really tell that it's been as of now, I can tell that 2021 in my experience has been a better year compared to 2020, but I can't
Mm-hmm.
say fully that it's a great year because there have been a lot of ups and downs also. Like right now, in August, I can say that um, it's it's tough. It's tough because of the news.
Yes, I
Um,
agree.
yeah, because of the news and because of the extended enhanced community quarantine. And I know that it's a necessity for us to like follow, but I'm also worried about the people who are basically earning their livelihood and they need to go outside for that. And I'm also worried about the people who are vulnerable to catching the disease, the COVID-19 disease. And yeah, a lot of things to worry about really. And I'm yeah, some those are the kind of thoughts that keep me up at night. And I'm gonna ask you the same thing, Alvi. Like how are you these days? And basically how are you coping with it?
Thank you. As for me, my experiences have also been the same. And as you coined it, it's a loaded question because for me, um, there are days where I have difficulty explaining my emotions, my feelings, because work and home are basically in the same area. So it's tough for me sometimes to compartmentalize that part in my life, which is to divide work and divide just being at home. And it's been a struggle, honestly. And
Yeah,
I can say that there are days where I'm okay, and there are days where I'm not okay.
right.
Yes,
Um,
that's for me.
I can totally relate with the work from home setup because I think it's because like in my case in the pandemic, like I started working from home full time. So that's something that I still like, I admit that I'm still not an expert at, because there are times when sometimes personal life gets into like the work life, and like there are tasks at home that I need to do, like for example washing the laundry, feeding my dogs, and then sometimes they get in the way
Mm-mm.
with the tasks that I need to do for work. So yeah, sometimes it's a juggle between those important tasks, and like compared to back when we were like working in a specific place, like we had to go to the office, and then separate our time, our priorities between personal life and professional life. I think that was manageable despite the stress of our professional life, that the stress that comes
Yeah.
with it. But during the pandemic, like now we are working from home, we are confined in our space, in our like, for me, I have a designated space. I work in my room. I work in my desk, but at the same time, sometimes whenever I decide to like take a nap, take a break, I just go to my bed and just like lie down with my laptop on. So it's really tough to like divide the time, because
Mm.
then personal life and professional life, sometimes they intertwine whenever we work from home. So
Mm.
like I have a question regarding to that for you, Alvi. Not, you are working like in the academe at the same time, so like how do you deal with the environment of like the online like operations when it comes to your job? Like I know that there's a struggle with working from home. For me, I can't really relate to the like academic setup, because my work, I don't work in an academe. But like can you share to us what's it like to like transition from, you know, going to school and like working in the guidance counselor's office, and then, you know, having that separate like environment, and then right now that we are under like enhanced community quarantine, and you have to like transition, like the abrupt transition of like maintaining your tasks, and at the same time in an environment that's quite personal for you.
Thanks for that, Ange. At the beginning of lockdown, that was a year ago, right? And
Right.
from the start of it all, it really was a struggle for me because I was not someone who works remotely.
Mm-hmm.
I work in an office setup, and in an office setup, you are dealing with a lot of people around you, and you see several people every day, which is a whole lot different from what I do now. Uh, During last year, it was difficult. I had somehow a bit of a struggle really taking the work at home, but as of now, I am slowly and easing into it. It's been a year already, so I have time on my hands, and I utilize that time in my hands to adjust fully, and somehow um I can really say that it's different than what it was before. There are no students in person, and then there are no co-workers in person that I can actually see right in front of me or beside me or just walking across the hall. So the human interaction that I was used to was different somehow right at this time. And even as an introvert, I thought that it's okay for me to just sit myself in the corner somewhere if I were in an office setup. But
Mm-hmm.
I realize now that it's really important to actually have a live interaction with a person, with coworkers and with friends. So that I see is the biggest difference um working at home. Yeah.
Right. And to add to that, Alvi, I can understand
Mm-mm.
about like the introvert side of things, because there are situations where I sometimes want to be alone, but then again, like it's a it's a totally different experience that we're having in the pandemic. I mean, like like I understand that humans are inherently social beings, so like we have that need to like see other people, catch up with friends, and then right now, like it's really tough because like it's a reality that going outside is dangerous, and like meeting other people, like if without social distancing measures, can be, it can lead us to become vulnerable with the with the with the disease. And you know that it's that like mindset that kind of like worries me. I don't know how it ends. I don't know when it ends, because it's been more than a year since we've been dealing with the pandemic. And like even until now, 2021 is there's only like 4 months left, I guess, before we enter
Yes.
2022. But
Mm-mm.
then again, we still have like personally, I think that I haven't really like completed processing like mentally processing what happened in 2020, because a lot that was exactly the year when a lot of things has changed. And then 2021 is somehow like a
Yes.
transition year. It's us like like accepting the reality, but then again, things happen, like things are still worsening and stuff like that. So let me ask you, Alvi, like during this time, and also like since the pandemic started, what have been like your coping mechanisms? What are some things that you do to make you feel better, to make you feel comforted, and basically things that make up your time that will help you, cope with what's going on?
Mm. As for the coping mechanisms, I have a lot of them. I practice things that are entirely different from my work, which is what I do most of the day. And so I try to read a book that is not academically related, or watch Netflix, or just eat. And sometimes I do exercise if I can, because they say you have to be fit during this time. So I'm trying to do that as well. The usual stuff that are very comforting for a human being. And those are the things that we like to do when we're stressed out, when we're feeling anxious. So for me, that's for me. But how about you, Ange? What are those things that you like doing just to take your mind off from the stress and the anxiety that's going on around us?
Right. For me, I do the same. Basically part of like the same things that you do.
Mm-mm.
I read a book. I also like watch a Netflix series. So I've just finished Shira. It's an animated series on
Mm-mm. Okay.
Netflix, and it's a good one, because like they actually remade uh an old cartoon back way back then, and then they like remade it into like a very like stylistic animated like series right now, and I recommend it to to our listeners. But yeah,
Okay.
I read a book. Like I read. By the way, what are the books that you've read? I'm curious.
So far,
Yeah.
I've been reading Eleanor Oliphant by Gail
Wow.
Honeyman. So it's a story about a girl who has this weird social interactions because of her trauma.
Mhm.
And I've got a long list of to be read books, but
Yeah.
I hope that I can finish them. But so far, that's my current
Current
read
read. That's
right now.
amazing.
So for you was
Yeah.
the anime, right, from Netflix, and some
Yeah, it's
books.
an
Okay.
animated series, but yeah, that's one thing that like keeps me like keeps me comforted. Like it distances me away from my worries, my troubles. And
Mm-mm.
sometimes whenever like my coping mechanism, I also do exercise in the weekends. Um a lot of times though, Alvi, it's kind of strange, because in my like since I live I'm mostly at home now. Sometimes chores help me feel good.
Yeah,
um
same. Same
cleaning
for me.
cleaning our sala, our living room, cleaning my room, washing the laundry. Sometimes my family, since my mom these days are mostly at is also mostly at home. Well, my sister goes to work because she's a nurse, so she has to like go to the hospital to work. But my mom and I, and also like sometimes whenever my sister is at home, we clean. um, I wash my clothes, and then yeah. While doing that though, I also listen to podcasts. So I just like
Mm-mm.
plug in my earphones, and then just listen to a lot of podcasts that like the podcast that we're doing now. Creative some podcasts that are like involved around creativity, inspirational podcasts. So those medium that like help me, like give me deliver really inspiring messages can help me like cope with what's going on and help me like distance myself from my worries for a while. And yeah, there are a lot of like there have been a lot of like sleepless nights because I tend to worry a lot. Like I think one trait that I am still working on to improve about myself is like my ability to be pessimistic and be cynical,
Mm-hmm.
because like one thing that I realized when the pandemic happened is that life is not certain at all. So like things can happen abruptly, and we never expected this. When we were in 2019, we welcomed like 2020 with full hopes in our hearts that, oh my gosh, today's I like this year is gonna be like the year where I fulfill my plans, where I pursue this and that. And then basically when 2020 happened, the pandemic happened, no one really expected it. No one wanted it to happen, but it happened. So it's that idea, that concept that, sometimes keeps me awake, the what ifs, the what could have beens, and then the regrets that somehow are beyond our control. But then again, when I listen to those podcasts, I also like have a realization that we're not the only ones suffering from these worries. We're not the only ones,
Mm-hmm.
um, dealing with these things. And yeah, in the books that I read, I usually read dark books. So I have to admit, I read Stephen King's. I just finished reading Stephen King's Revival. It's a 2014 novel, and I like somehow they offer me a sense of escapism, like fantasy books, horror books, and basically those books that are like of the supernatural. Yeah, too far fetched from reality. So they offer me a sense of like escapism, that I want to explore a world where it's far different from what we're experiencing right now. And yeah, they help me feel good, especially when the characters um de- choose to do something that would surprise us and would make us root for them to win in the story. So that's basically um what keeps me like going. So yeah, cleaning,
Mm-hmm.
doing exercise. Like I although these days I frequently just do exercise, I don't really do exercise a lot because um like one of which is like I don't have the time, but I'm working towards that. I'm working to make it regular. And then yeah, reading a book and then watching series and cleaning, as mostly cleaning. So yeah, those are the things that I do to cope.
Yes, so these things actually that we do, like cleaning and watching movies and reading books, yes, are one way of us to escape somehow of
Mhm.
the real problem that is going on around us, and somehow it has helped us to put in some structure in our lives, especially when we're doing chores, right? Cooking and cleaning. We never found it
Yeah.
satisfying when we were younger, but right now we found these little
Value.
moments in. Yes, we found value in these things while we're at home, and
Mhm.
somehow we realize every day that the things that are so much more important are just so simple and so little, and we realize that every day, even though it's causing us so much anxiety and
True.
stress lately. But we somehow learn to value the things that are much more important and are priceless, right?
Right.
So
I
since we
definitely
talked
agree.
about positive coping mechanisms, do you have also coping mechanisms that are not good, that are not that are somehow negative as well? Are
Um,
there some mechanism of yours that are
well,
negative in some ways?
I guess you can say sleeping late, if that can be considered
Mm-hmm.
like a coping mechanism, like a quote unquote coping mechanism, or it's not really an activity though. But wait, let me think. I guess I have to say. So yeah, I mentioned not having the time for exercise. I guess that's one negative. Like the, it's not really like a coping mechanism, but it's more of like failing to do something that I should do, or something like that. And then yeah, overthinking is one. I think that's one thing that keeps me awake at night, in most nights. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess when it comes to like a specific negative coping mechanism, I'd have to say binge watching the series, because
Mm, I
there are
see.
times like there are times when we were working, right? And I hope my boss doesn't hear this, but he doesn't know that I host a podcast with you anyway, so it's okay. But yeah, there are times when like I just take a break, and then sometimes I take a break from work, and then I binge watch like an episode of my favorite series, and then I keep on watching. Like I'm intrigued with with how the series like like how the series progresses, and then like after I finish an episode, I will watch another one without knowing that I've already spent way too much time watching it. So like that's how and then in the end, like I have to like double my time in beating the deadlines for my task at work. But anyway, that's something that I still need to work on. And yeah, binge watching series is definitely one. And then
Mm-mm.
yeah, so far that's one that I can think of. How about you, Alvi? What can you share about one like coping mechanism that doesn't really like offer promising results?
Okay. So for negative coping strategies or mechanisms, for me I realize every day that sometimes it outweighs my positive coping mechanisms, because when I'm stressed out or anxious, I've recently felt so anxious lately because of work and because of schooling. So there were a lot of things that was going on that went on inside my head, and the tendency for me to negatively cope is detaching myself, somehow withdrawing from interaction, or actually talking it out with someone or other people. And funny enough, I work in the field that actually encourages people to seek help, to want to ask help from people. And I think that's what I saw in myself. I cope negatively in a way that I don't want to bother other people. I don't want to burden them with my issues, my problems at the moment, because I think they're small and not important, and sometimes it's better for me to just deal with it myself. So I think that's like the worst part of my negative coping mechanism. And yes, I can relate with the sleeping late and the binge watching. Sometimes I don't finish a series and then I move on to another, just so I could relate with the characters. I could move on
True.
with another series and think it's fun. But yes, I think that's a part of my negative coping mechanism. But mostly it's um, being afraid of actually wanting help, and
Mhm,
actually wanting to be listened by others. So
mhm.
that for me is my experience. Mm-mm.
So that leads me to my like one question that I have for it,
Mm-mm.
Alvi. Like it's 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 natural. I guess it's natural for us to feel this way because you know
Mm-mm.
we tend to react differently to a lot of things. Um, so like when can we know that this reaction is okay, and when is it when do we like when do we know that this action is not okay, or like how do we draw the line, or how do we um like how do we overcome these negative coping mechanisms, despite the fact that these are coping mechanisms that we naturally do to react a certain way to a given situation. So when do we say that it's okay, and when do we say that it's not okay? Like I'm gonna ask you about that because I know you're
Okay.
an expert when it comes to psychological terms and like those topics.
um okay, this question was a very mouthful question from Boyabunda, right? From the pageant.
Right.
Right, so
Definitely.
this got
Oh, I didn't
everyone
realize.
confused, and it,
Yeah.
it was a trending question.
Right,
So
right.
it's okay to not be okay. I've learned every day that there are things that we don't have it all figured out, that days are not entirely perfect. There are moments in between and moments in everyday life that we are dealing with certain struggles. Like we deal with sadness, heartache, disappointments, and even though we experience those things, it's okay that we deal them, that we acknowledge those feelings, and we do not want to just hide them. or think that they're not valid, because our emotions, our feelings are entirely valid. And even though we have different experiences, um, there are things that we feel in certain intensities and feelings. So it's okay to not be okay. What's not okay is when
Right.
you do not acknowledge your feelings. Like,
Right.
I'd like to think of our emotions and our experiences as in, like, in an aquarium that is filled with water. Like,
Mhm.
uh, I don't know if you can picture it out, but there's like a room full of glass and it's filled with water.
Mhm.
And when it's filled with so much,
Mhm.
and it's all pent up, like our emotions, and it will just spill out
Mhm.
drastically in a way that would affect others, not
Right.
just yourself but others. So it's okay not to be okay. It's okay that you're not perfectly fine today and tomorrow and the next days ahead.
Right.
It's but there are days where you have to acknowledge that I didn't go okay today, and that's
Mhm.
fine. And I can work on my emotions and I
Right.
can deal with that. So how about you, Ange? What are your thoughts about it? I was rambling so much, but yeah,
No,
these are my thoughts.
you were actually giving a really good message. Yeah,
Mm,
it's very valuable for our listeners, and it's very relevant these days because most of us, I believe, are not okay. And yeah, I
mm,
can personally attest that um, the these days have really hit us hard, and um, yeah, I definitely agree with what you said about our feelings being valid, because not feeling anything at all is that's the problem. Like,
yes, that's
we-
the scary
yeah,
part.
what's
Mm,
normal is that we whenever something happens to us, it's okay to feel angry, it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to grieve, it's okay to be lonely. Just take the time to like capture these feelings and let it, like, just feel it. I mean, I remember one time when, before the pandemic, I had a conversation with one of my coworkers, and she was also talking about, like, how she dealt with stress, how she dealt with, like, frustrations with work, and she gave me this advice that just feel it, just, like, whenever things happen in life that builds up to your frustration, don't combat it in a way that you have to force yourself not to think about them. Yeah, just, let them go through you, um let them, like, just feel them, just feel the
mm,
results of those situations, and it's definitely important to acknowledge what we're feeling, because it's one way to move on, I guess. And this doesn't just apply to, like,
mm,
heartbreaks and stuff, because heartbreaks are not just, like, defined by broken relationships, or, like, those things, that relationships that didn't last, but it's, like, heartbreaks also exist in a lot of things, like realizing that, like, for example, realizing that our plans had to be postponed because of the pandemic, like, that's a specific example.
mm,
That's a heartbreak, because we are, um like, hoping for those plans to happen, but then, um like, something happened in reality that is out of our control. So when that happened, it, like, it breaks our heart, because um it 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 gives us, like, a broken hope, like it breaks our hope also. So basically, it's okay to feel defeated, to feel lonely, to feel miserable, but then, what's the question then is, like, okay, if we feel it this way, yes, we can feel it naturally, we can feel these emotions, but then what can we do? I guess, like, based on my personal experience, what can we do would probably be to acknowledge that, um there are people out there who are willing to help us. I mean, like, for us, Alvi, we're friends, and
mm,
friendship, like, one of the unwritten rule for friendship is, like, checking on each other and making each other feel that, we're not alone in this, we're not alone with what we're going through. And I think that one thing that we can give to our listeners is, whenever, like, you feel something, or whenever you know that your friend is feeling something, like, don't hesitate to reach out. Like, just like acknowledge the reality, and then tell someone, like find someone who you're comfortable sharing your emotions to, because that's one way also of moving on, like uncare like uh unweighing the burden, if I'm not like if I'm using the correct term, um like help, letting people know that you can like help them, and also knowing that there are people out there who can help us. So basically that's an important step to moving on.
I like that you made that point about seeking help and
Mhm.
encouraging others to reach out to friends, because as to our listeners, Angelo has been a friend of mine for so long, and what I really appreciate about him is that even though I don't say much, and I rarely get to chat because of, there are times that we're busy, but sometimes he, or more often than not, he really knows what's up. And I think if you have your friends the same way that I have with Ange and so many other very few close friends that I have who knows what's up, and if they check up on you and you trust them enough to tell what you're going through, then be open with them. And
Right.
I think right now the best that we can do is to reach out not just to them,
Hmm.
but also acknowledge that in fact we need them too in our lives,
Right.
and we want to talk to them. We want to be heard, and we want to be listened at, especially at this time.
Right.
And the best thing about during this time, this
Hmm.
very uncertain time, is that even though we experience a lot of struggles and feelings that are um, we are very foreign somehow to us, is
Hmm.
that it is collective. It's
Right.
a collective experience. That, like what I always try to emphasize, is that it's not just me that is struggling, but also others. And somehow that I found comfort in that, meaning that we are not okay,
Hmm.
and we feel certain emotions and feelings right now, and we are disturbed somehow because of the pandemic. But
Right.
knowing that we're not alone, knowing that this is a collective experience, is more than comfort enough. And if
Right.
you have a friend, which I'm sure you do, whom you can reach out to in an instant, then that's the biggest step in actually wanting help,
Right.
or wanting to be reached out by others.
Right,
Yeah.
definitely. Great words right there, Alvi. Especially
Thank
nowadays
you.
when with our collective experience. I'm sure that our feelings would probably be collective as well, but then there are different ways to cope. So yeah, so I guess the major takeaways is that it's okay not to feel good all the time, but then we always have to
Mm.
like acknowledge that there are people out there who can help, and we ourselves are also like capable, if we're comfortable with it, we are also capable of helping others, by just like reaching out, and then just catching up, these days, even though we don't have to um like all of us don't have to like see each other face to face because the lockdown, we can always like reach with each other like through online or through like various media channels, like communication channels, like there are a lot of like apps out there, like apps that are like not as complicated as Facebook, perhaps, that you can communicate with your friend. And yeah, the conversations are important. And I think also, to add to this, Alvi, I think it's also good to be kind all the time, even though we don't really
Yes.
know the person who we're talking to. Like for example, um one example that I can give, in my line of work, I was reaching out to clients that my boss wanted me to reach out to, and then there was this really like I can understand the what the person, like, even though I don't really know the full story behind how the person responded to me, but I guess I can understand their situation because they're busy people. And then when I sent them an email, that person was like saying hostile things about me because that person was like the way I like sent them an email, I sent them an invitation for a meeting, and then when that person told me that it should have been my boss who reached out to him, and then um even though my boss was the one who tasked me, like who asked me to send them the message. So it bothers me that what if that person has sent a hostile message to another person who doesn't really know how to accept like certain words that are mean, right? So um like I think the least that we can do right now is to be kind to each other, to say things that are um kind to each other, choose the exact words that that we know won't hurt other people's feelings, especially when we deal with people, with a lot of people in our work, and we deal with workmates, with workmates, because collective experience goes with collective emotions. And if we're feeling down, if we're feeling depressed, then the least that we can do is to make sure that person is being treated right. And then
Yes.
yeah,
Mm-mm.
basically it's that. So um yeah, be kind to each other. That's the least that we can do right now, and to uh be there for our loved ones and the people we care for.
Mm. You made some very valuable points about um, having the courage to seek help and having the the generosity to give help yourself,
Right.
and most of all, the kindness and self-compassion. I think um, the biggest thing that we need to learn is about kindness and compassion,
Right.
because how are we able to seek help, how are we able to give help, how are we able to listen and reach out to others if we ourselves are not kind to ourselves, right?
Right.
So self-compassion really is the answer to it all, and also being kind to other people, especially during this time. Well, not
Right.
just it's not it this time is the perfect avenue for us to be kind and
Right.
to give a level of sensitivity to the feelings of others,
Definitely.
because I know and you know that we're going through a lot of things right now.
Mhm.
Uh it's a mixture of different emotions somehow.
Right.
And
And it's
yes,
yeah.
it's a good reminder to tell people that you have to be kind to yourself and everything
Mhm.
else follows.
Right.
Kind to yourself and kindness to others as well. So I think
Definitely.
that's the way that um, this goes for
Right.
our mental health.
And it's
Mm-mm.
always like a learning experience, Alvi, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's not like an overnight change where, like, for example, if we're not comfortable reaching out to other people, it's not always an overnight change where we have like to really um like automatically be comfortable with sharing to all people, like, oh, like, hey, I'm not feeling well. Hey, I'm not feeling well. You should be
Yes.
concerned. So
Mm-mm.
it doesn't happen that way, I guess. I think that's not ideal. Yeah, trusting the process. Like going with like one person is enough to reach out to, and tell like share what each other is going through, and that's ideal. So it's not an overnight change for people to be automatically be comfortable with those things. So yeah, it takes courage, but then again, there's always like that certain process to go with it. And yeah, I definitely agree with you with all those things, and it really helps, it really helps with the process of moving on, and healing the wounds that the sad reality that has like inflicted or cost us.
I agree with that. It takes a lot of process and it takes a certain kind of courage to actually want to reach out or ask help from someone. But as for me, I also learned that it is really helpful to actually seek out, whether
Right.
it be a friend or a mentor or
Right.
just your family member, if
Mhm.
you have at home with you.
Right.
The first step really is acknowledging that I'm not okay at this time. And if I'm not okay at this time, I need to let this out
Mhm.
somehow with someone. And
Right.
that first step, when you decide to actually want to talk to someone, reach out, may it be on Messenger, on Zoom, or Google Meet,
Right.
whatever platform, that is already a very big step that you're taking. And if you're doing that, if you think that it helps you, then we are proud of you, and
Definitely.
we hope that you continue seeking help as much as
Right.
possible. Mm-mm.
And to reach to our probably our like uh this point, like last point, Alvi, like
Mm-mm.
what are additional advice that you can give to people who you know still have that struggle, because these days struggle has been ongoing. And like what can you share about the next steps, like aside from like reaching out and to seek professional help on our own, like what are other things that we can do to help mitigate what we're like feeling right now.
For me, I would have to say in a very brief statement that um, anything that is heavy or that is carried on your own
Mhm.
is feels like a burden. So if you share it with someone, then the burden becomes lighter. So I lived by that statement somehow.
Mhm.
I think I wrote this like a few years ago, and I realized and I learned that we carry the world in us sometimes as
Mhm.
humans. We
Right.
have struggles, we carry it in our backs. But
Mhm.
when we have someone else or have people in our lives, like a support system that we can trust on, that
Right.
to help us carry with it, then the struggle is becoming lighter somehow. So
Right.
that's, I think, what you need to remind yourself.
Right.
Yeah. How about you, Ange?
For me, I would say that acknowledgement is always the first step to like healing. To acknowledge that we are in pain, and then the next step follows. I think that most people, like even I myself, I'm like uh, like a victim, or like yeah, a victim to this kind of mentality that sometimes we tend to think that we can do this on our own because we've been through this situation before. But I believe that some like painful memories would build up, and then it reaches to a certain point where we could no longer carry the burden. And that's the one that's dangerous, because acknowledging the fact that we've been through painful situations, we are going through painful situations, is a first step to really like know that we're not well. And then if we're not well, then we need to seek help, like whether professionally or from our friends. And it's I think that's one way to cope, and that's one way to help resolve the issues that we've been dealing with. And yeah, the world is not perfect, humans are definitely not perfect. I think the only perfect person to have ever lived was Jesus. Like I believe in that because I'm a Christian. So like we're both Christians, Alvi. So yeah, it's that, and whatever faith you have, like um and yeah, which leads me to my next point, Alvi. Prayers help, whether you're a bit like for
Yes,
believers.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to have someone more like far greater than us to rely on. Um, I've been seeing a lot of your posts also on your social media accounts, Alvi, about like devotions. Like you shared Bible verses, and yeah, if that's one way for us to let people know that there's someone who cares, we can start with our social media by posting inspirational quotes, or like empowering and comforting biblical verses, or like whatever religion you have, whatever faith you follow. It's always best to have someone greater, far greater than us to talk to, because yeah, it's and then we go with human interaction, and then talking to people who would listen, who would respond back, and who would give us like a valuable advice to help us like heal. And that's one thing that those are great things to follow and to do, especially when we're like treading in turbulent waters, I guess.
Mm. And you mentioned earlier, you made a point about us being inherently social. So,
Mhm.
as humans, we are inherently social beings. And from that point that you highlighted earlier, I can say that we really need to open up somehow.
Right. Mhm.
I learned over time that if you're too reliant on yourself, then it's
Mhm.
going to damage you in the long run.
Right.
And yes, anything that is carried with others is gonna
Mhm.
make all of this lighter and
Mhm.
somehow tolerable, and something that you can survive every day. And yes, you also said about faith,
Yeah.
and whether whatever religion that you have out there, to our listeners,
Mhm.
it's always good to hold on to something spiritual that is above all of us. So if
Definitely.
you're a believer and you are a Christian or whatever of denominations that you have, it's
Mhm.
important to hold on to something that is far from science, far from whatever is going on around us. And for
Faith
us,
keeps us alive.
and I, we hold on to our Christian faith, and yeah, devotions have helped a lot as well,
Mhm.
and it tends to calm us and somehow bring forth a kind of comfort that is not found in anything else, and that's different. We have our friends, we have professional help, but having the spirituality and the faith is also very helpful. Mm.
Well, definitely. Yeah. And yeah, I guess when it comes to our like hobbies at the same time, Alvi, I guess if if you're like if our listeners are readers, they can read good books, inspiring books,
Yes.
inspirational
Mm-mm.
books. If our like if we have listeners who loves to watch good films, then I think one advice would be to watch films that don't trigger emotions. I mean, don't trigger dark
Yes.
emotions. So go for films that are like fun, lighthearted,
Or comforting.
comforting, exactly. And if we have listeners that are health buffs, I think working out from home is also a good way to start. I mean, I'm not like an expert when it comes to fitness, but I often see a lot of YouTube videos that are like giving lessons about like workout, and then yeah, they can do that, like yoga, stuff like that. So I would love to try it as well. But yeah, hopefully I can make some time for it. But yeah, that's definitely what people can do to like cope. And yeah, being kind to one another, reaching out to friends, and being there for your family. If uh there are situations where you're not comfortable to be with your family, you don't have to force yourself to be comfortable with them around. You just have to like, sometimes there are personal times when you just have to like distance yourself from other people you're not comfortable spending it with, but never harm people, never do things that would like hurt people. Reach out to the people who care for you and you truly care about. So yeah, that's one.
Yes, we just have to remember that we have different coping mechanisms.
Mhm,
Whatever we think is good for us, we think is
mhm,
a good distraction, then do it. Whether it be
mhm.
cooking or fitness or
Yeah.
reading a book or watching a movie, whatever you think is comforting for you and relaxing, then do it. Take
Yeah.
your mind off things, keep yourself away from the stress and the glooming feeling that we have at this moment. Somehow it's a
Mhm.
sort of escape. And yes, our parting message really is to be kind to yourself, and everything else follows from there. When you're kind to yourself, you're kind as well to others, and it
Right.
will spread out like wildfire for us.
Definitely.
Yeah. So thank you
So thank you,
for,
everyone.
yes, thank you for listening to our podcast. Ange, we're going to invite others to follow us, right, in our
Right.
social media.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will
Yes.
be providing the links of our username and yeah, the links of our social media platforms in the description below. And we might as well also add helpful resources that would lead
Yes,
you to
definitely.
professional help. So
Mm.
Alvi
Mental
really
health
knows a lot about
resources.
them. Yeah.
Yes, we will link all mental health resources that you can go to and seek help from for whatever it is that you're going through at this moment. So we hope that this podcast is a safe space and is an episode that is helpful for you and relatable as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.